Hello, this is Ken Ferry with this week's Boots in the Field. What a crazy April. Thomas says that we're on course to break some records if it doesn't change pretty quickly. You know, if it was the warmest April on record, we'd blame it on global warming. But maybe being the coldest April on record, I'm not sure who to blame. Maybe we can blame it on the Russians. I don't know. A lot of the Corn Belt saw snow yesterday. Reports coming in from Buffalo Center, Iowa said they've received 47 inches of snow in the past 26 days. That's just crazy. A lot of calls coming into the office now, and I can tell there's a lot of anxiety out there. People are getting pretty nervous on what's this spring going to unfold out to, and what do we do, where do we go from here? And you know, I've heard it said before that if you're fighting a lot of anxiety and you're in a bad mood all the time, good chance you're watching too much news. That's all that's on news is usually bad stuff. Suggestion is to turn off the bad news. Just quit listening to the news and your attitude will improve. Well, in this case, I want to talk about managing anxiety by getting rid of the calendars. Take all the calendars down that you have in the house and put them away. And pay attention to the conditions in the field, not the calendar on the wall. If nothing else, set all your calendars back to March. That might make it easier for you as well. There's been a lot of questions and concerns about early planting of beans. A lot of you guys had set your plans to plant soybeans early to get them out there in the first part of April, and wondering how your early planted bean plans are going to play out. Well, boys, the ship has sailed on early planted beans. There's not going to be any early planted beans from here on out. And early planted beans, while we're excited about them, are for the years when it's conducive to plant those early beans. In the past 5 years, we've had that March warm-up that rolled into April with a warm early season in April. Now, that early April is usually followed by a crash later in April. Sometimes a 3 or 4 day crash in temperatures like we saw in 2016 on the Mother's Day Massacre, or a 20-day crash in temperatures like we saw in 2017. But last year on our April warm-up, the 10th of April, we had a low soil temperature here at Hayworth at 55 degrees. By the 18th, a year ago today, our low temperature for soil temperature at the 2-inch level was 60 degrees, a little above 60 degrees. This morning, our low soil temperature is around 34 degrees. So there's almost a 30-degree cooler soil conditions right now than there was a year ago. Now, temperatures, of course, did crash last year, after all the way down to about 45 degrees during that April 28th through May 9th period, if we all remember how much replant and hand-wringing that put us through. Last year, most of our really early planted beans were up before the temperatures crashed. So while stands got beat up a little bit, we had time on our side, and lower stands still produced exceptional yields. I know with our customer base, for the first time, we have more beans planted than corn. Some of these beans were planted in March. Most were planted in that 2-day warm-up between April 12th and 14th. At this point, I'm not sure that's a good thing. Beans planted in March that emerge in May are not early beans. I expect these beans to survive, but I do expect to see some substantial stand losses if they've been in the ground for a month. If you only have half of them survive and emerge in May, you don't have time on your side like we did with half of them surviving in early April, and we have that early growth there. So we're going to have to reevaluate these beans that are in the ground already when they do make it up, because a poor stand in May has to be evaluated as far as how much time we got to replant them and put them back in. So we'll have to stay attuned to it and see what that survival is. Looking at the 10-day forecast, good news is there's not a lot of moisture in it. Bad news is there's not a lot of heat or sunshine either. The possibility of getting temperatures to 50 degrees and staying there overnight really doesn't look that good. For you guys in the south, maybe a week from Saturday, We're starting to see daytime temperatures bump finally at 70 degrees. To the north, looking at the weather forecast, for instance, up at Streeter, I don't see 50-degree soil temperatures in the 10-day forecast. Planting corn in soils below 50 degrees leads to higher instances of seed chilling. Remember, the first 24 to 48 hours seed is in the ground is when it imbibes water, and that's when chilling occurs. If we can get the seed swelled and then the temperatures drop, the issues are not as bad. Seed chilling can account for 10 to 15% loss in ear count. With that said, last year we did see some losses of 35% due to the weather conditions. Now, a 15% loss in ear count can account for 35 to 40 bushel loss in yield, making seed chilling very expensive. Not a total loss, not a wipeout, but it can make it expensive if we give up 35 or 40 bushel in the first 48 hours of the planting season. Seed chilling will also happen with beans, but a 10 or 15% loss in stand-on beans is really hard to measure in yield. With that said, I do think the opportunity to plant some beans next week is real. True, these are perfect conditions for the onset of sudden death. Cool, moist soils, and where beans may take 2 weeks or longer to come up. I would have my beans treated for SDS that we're going to plant next week. Most of you have beans treated that you had planned to plant early. Let's start with these beans. For those of you that don't have any beans treated for SDS, I would scramble now to get some treated so you can start planting next week. Remember, SDS doesn't care about the calendar either. It goes off of soil conditions. If you remember in 2016, beans that were planted early in April and got up and out of the ground had little issues with sudden death. It was the beans planted during the Mother's Day massacre that got hammered with sudden death. Planting untreated beans in cold, moist conditions in central Illinois, you're saying to SDS, pick me. That's what's going to happen. So we got to be smart about this. A lot of you now have both corn and bean planters, so you can plant both crops at the same time. I would be ready to roll with the bean planters, and I would tap the brakes on those corn planters. Maybe get the first day jitters out of the way, make sure they're ready, but wait for better conditions when they get here. Most of you have one planter to do both crops. Talking with the customer this morning, he said the planter's ready, just waiting to see which meters to put in, corn meters or the bean meters. What are we going to start with? My advice, let's put the bean meters in and let's make sure we got some treated seed, and let's start the season out planting beans. When conditions change, shift back to corn. Our corn planting window is going to get tight. Now, I know I've said we have a month to plant corn, but half of that month will be gone by the time we get started. So as we've said, we need to be able to plant our corn in 5 to 7 days. Might take 30 days to get those 5 to 7 working days. This is something we've preached for a long time. Years like this is why we make that recommendation, so we can still get that plant stand we're looking for. Most of you guys have geared up for corn planting. Between bigger planters, more planters, higher speed planters, you're geared up to handle your 5 to 7 day planting window. With you guys with normal planters, don't turn them into high speed planters in your mind because the neighbor's running at high speed. Remember, junk in, junk out. Remember, let conditions dictate your actions, not the calendar. Don't push tillage and cause compaction issues. Again, there's some videos on our website if you need help making the decision when your field is ready. Don't mud corn in. We're not farming for crop insurance at this point, so let's not mud the corn in. Let soil temperatures on your farm dictate when you start corn planting. Here at CropTech, in our tilled and no-tilled and covered plots, monitoring soil temperature on the hour, we have very similar soil temperatures between the no-till and the till. At the low end of the day, the no-till is slightly warmer than the tilled, and the cover crop is slightly warmer than the no-till. But during the day, the tilled ground is carrying soil temperatures, max temperatures 10 degrees warmer than the no-tilled ground. So what I'm saying is, depending on your soils, your moisture, your practices, your soil temperatures could be different than somebody just 10 miles away. You guys to the south, you'll see things come around faster. You guys in Iowa, at least wait till the snow melts. We're seeing movement in the black cutworm and armyworm moth traps. The guys are calling in the catches. Because the corn will be small, most likely when feeding begins, we're going to have to keep an eye on this, and we'll pay attention to it as time goes along, and we will deal with that at its time. Big thanks, though, for our guys that are running the trap lines and calling in those catches. We really appreciate that to help us keep an eye on both those insects. Crews are hard at the spring testing. They said if you think the 2-inch soil temperatures are cold, you should feel the soil they're pulling from 2 foot down for our ISNTs. It is really cold. So hang in there. Hope this helps. Keep her safe. Keep her moving when it is fit.